All right, Alex, what's on tap for today?
Today we're recording how often should you train your glutes.
Oh, sweet. It's a quick one. All right. Today's video is on how often you should train your glutes. And the answer is 3. If you like what you saw today, please make sure you subscribe to my channel and make sure you hit like and definitely comment and I'll answer away. All right. I keyed. So, the short answer is indeed 3 times a week. So, many of you out there want a short, simple answer, then that's your answer, 3. But the long answer is 2 to 6, and here's the deal, that's a big difference. Training 2 times versus 6 times, that's a threefold discrepancy, but the answer will make sense once I explain 7 different factors that need to be taken into consideration in order to determine your ideal glute training frequency. Now, before I delve into these 7 factors, first I want to touch on the research and anecdotes. So if we look at the literature for an answer, we will see that in general, training a muscle group twice a week is clearly superior to training a muscle group once a week. But here's the deal, after that, there's not much evidence in support of higher training frequencies, like training 3 times a week is not better than twice, or 4 or 5 or 6 is not better than just training a muscle twice a week when volume is equated. Here's the problem with the literature. Number 1, there's no research on glutes in this regard. There's not a whole lot of research on glutes in general because a lot of researchers just don't want to deal with glutes for obvious reasons. I've got some colleagues that are like, I'll never investigate glutes. I just don't want to be accused of anything like putting electrodes on someone. And I'm like, frustrating because it's no big deal, but to them it is. And I understand it in today's world. And the other issue is, what if volume wasn't equated? Can the glutes handle more volume? Can the glutes handle more training frequency? I think they can. Why would that be? I don't know. Their architecture is unique. They're huge, the biggest muscle group in the body. They do a lot of joint actions, you know. They carry out different types of hip extension exercises, hip abduction exercises, and hip external rotation exercises. But just anecdotally, people can usually handle a lot of volume with glutes. So on the flip side of the literature, we've got anecdotes. How do the people with the best glute development train their glutes? How does the creme de la creme train? Well, I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of like top 10 bikini Olympians, you know. I've probably worked with like 20 different women who have placed in the top 10 for Miss Bikini Olympia, and I have trained so many women from around the world who have visited me or just who have been my clients that experienced incredible results and had amazing glute development. I mean, I'd venture to guess that nobody in the world has worked with more people with great glutes than I have. No one even comes close. And based on what I've seen, I would say that the majority of women with amazing glute development do train glutes 3 times a week. Some of them twice a week, and some of them up to like 6 times a week. But in general, 3 times would be the most common glute training frequency amongst high-level bikini competitors with nice glutes. So now we've talked about research and anecdotes. Let's dive into these 7 different factors. Number 1 is genetics. Now, this is by far the most important factor, and I never hear anyone talk about it. I've done a lot of research in this area, and genetics is huge. And you know this if you just have a lot of lifting partners. If you train people, there's some people that can train a muscle all the time and just hammer it with tons of volume, and then like the next day they're back they're back ready to roll again. They don't get very sore. They don't experience a lot of muscle damage. On the flip side, there's people who just look at a weight and they're sore the next day and they're beat up and they have to take a couple days off. Well, what's the difference between those 2 people? Well, one has excellent genetics for muscle damage and repair, the other does not. And there's actually a lot of research on this, and it's fascinating, but yes, some people don't experience a lot of muscle damage and they repair quicker than other people. So obviously people with good recovery and damage genetics are gonna be able to train more frequently than people without. And you know if you're that type of person, you know? The second is exercise selection, and this is huge as well. What if all you did was barbell glute bridges and lateral band walks? You could probably do those 2 exercises 6 days a week. On the flip side, what if all you did was heavy ass deadlifts and barbell walking lunges to failure? I would have a tough time doing those twice a week because my glutes would be so sore, my adductors get sore from lunges as well, but also deadlifts beat me up systemically. So do lunges. Like the rest of the week, I take more naps, I'm just wiped out, I'm exhausted, I go to sleep earlier. So what's the difference between those 2 types of exercises? Well, glute bridges and lateral band walks, they don't work you hard at long muscle lengths. They also don't involve a heavy eccentric component. When you do a deadlift, you lift the weight up, you lower it down. You don't dive bomb it down unless you kind of like let gravity pull it down for you and drop the weight. But if you control the weight on the way down, it gets harder into the stretch. So you kind of have to go a little slow because you're working very hard eccentrically. On the flip side, barbell glute bridge, you come up, you come down, you don't have to lower it under control. It gets easier as you lower it. For my PhD thesis, I investigated how people typically do squats versus hip thrusts. When they do squats while standing on a force plate, the lowering phase is only 10% less than the lifting phase. In other words, during the concentric action, it's only 10% more force than during the eccentric action. In contrast with hip thrusts, this is when you can just slam the plates down to the ground. With hip thrusts, people only use 1/3 of their concentric force during the eccentric phase, meaning they use 3 times more force to lift the weight than they do to lower it. So squats, lunges, stiff leg deadlifts, things like that, they have more of an emphasis on the eccentric phase. They also stretch you to longer length. And think about when you're contracting your muscles, the muscles pull together, but during an eccentric phase, they're being stretched. So that kind of is contradictory, and that's where you get more muscle damage, more tears, more micro lesions, things like that. So during a barbell glute bridge, you don't stretch the muscle to a long length. Think about a lateral band walk. There's not a lot of tension, in the stretch at all. You don't get tension until you're abducted till the muscle is at a very short muscle length. So these don't create a lot of damage. You don't need to repair. If there's no damage created in the first place, then there's not a lot of repair needed. You can train the glutes very frequently that way. The next factor is volume. If you just did 4 sets a day, you could probably train the glutes every day, 7 days a week. Now, I don't like people training 7 days a week because I think it's very important to have one pure rest day a week, at least one. You need that psychologically so you can be excited to set PRs and excited to train hard. But if you perform 30 sets in one day, you're going to be beat up. You're not going to be able to train as frequently. Now, some people can handle more volume than others because of genetics. In general, if you do around 12 sets per session, most people can train around 3 days a week with that and end up with around 36 sets per week. That's what I do with my Booty by Brett. But with Booty by Brett, I'll throw in additional days where it's just little glute circuits that don't beat you up too much. This just adds what I call penalty-free volume. It doesn't hamper your recovery, but it just adds a little more volume, gives you a little bit more development, as long as you don't overdo it. The next factor is load. In the literature, interestingly and contrary to popular opinion, lighter weight creates more muscle damage than heavier weight. Now that's counterintuitive, but here's the deal. That's what the literature says. In practice, heavier weight beats you up more, and here's why. When you use heavy weight, your form degrades more, When I'm doing a 1 rep max deadlift, I'm not picture perfect. I will round a little bit, my body contorts. When you have to kind of contort yourself to lift the weight, you end up with more joint damage, more damage to other structures other than just the muscles. And this beats you up locally and systemically. Your body knows when something's damaged, it's gonna try to shut you down. So if you use picture perfect form, it's not as big of a deal. But if you're training really hard, you're bound to stray a little bit from ideal form, and heavier weight will probably beat you up a little bit more than lighter weight. Next up, we have effort. This is a huge area of concern. You see those people that go to the gym and they just kind of they're doing like lunges and then they stop their set and you're like, they could have done 10 more easily. They're not even training close to failure. And in contrast, you have those people who are like, oh my God, you're watching them lift, you're like, they're done, they can't do another more. And somehow they squeeze out like 4 more reps. And you're like, how in the hell are they doing that? Some people train with way more effort than other people. If you train with low effort and you just do think about the old school Jane Fonda calisthenic workouts for your butt. You can do those every day. You're not training with high effort. You're not trying to set PRs. You're not utilizing progressive overload. So effort is huge here. Now this next factor is similar to effort, but I actually separated it because it's actually something that needs to be taken into consideration. Your intention. There are some lifters who just lift, they don't set PRs. They just go to the gym and get a good workout in. There are other lifters who are dead set on utilizing progressive overload. I will tell you, progressive overload is a lot more daunting, it's a lot more challenging. You can't train as frequently when you're going for progressive overload as you can when you're not. Think about going to the gym and not needing to set any PRs. Just kind of going for the mind-muscle connection, going for the feel, squeezing, trying to get a pump, feel the burn. If you train that way, you could train way more frequently than when you actually have something written down. You're like, I've gotten 315 for 10 reps, I'm going for 11 or 12. Big difference there. And the last factor is whether you're specializing or not. My Booty by Brett program, for example, is like a permanent glute specialization program. Yes, we do full body. You're gonna train your upper body as well, but the emphasis is shifted towards the glutes. Now, there's there's some research that indicates that when you specialize, you can handle more volume for that part. The problem with a lot of people's programs, they try to kind of specialize in everything. They try to do extra volume for their glutes, their quads, their hammies, their pecs, their delts, their lats, their arms. It's too much. When you lessen the volume for other muscle groups and increase the volume for one area, you can probably handle a little bit more training frequency. So now I've gone through the 7 factors. Now let me wrap things up and provide an example. So let's take a woman, for example, with very poor recovery genetics, performing the hardest exercise to recover from, like Bulgarian split squats and sumo deadlifts or something like that. Doing a lot of volume per workout, incorporating heavy loads, training every set to failure, focusing on progressive overload, and hammering every body part. This lady probably can't even train the glutes twice a week because it's all the things that lessen your potential glute training frequency. On the flip side, take someone with superior glute recovery genetics, performing mostly exercises that work you at shorter muscle lengths and don't have a heavy eccentric component, like hip thrust and band work, using medium to high rep loads, not tanking each set to failure, just going for mind-muscle connection, not really trying to set PRs, and someone who specializes in the glutes and doesn't do a ton of volume for other muscle groups. Now this woman can train the glutes 6 days a week, no problem. Okay, so I just listed both extremes. Chances are you're going to be in the middle with most of these, and you should probably train the glutes 3 times a week. But it might be 2 times a week depending on your factors, or it could be 5 times a week depending on your factors. But I wanted to give you everything to consider to help you be as scientific with your programming as possible to give you the best possible chance of succeeding. All right, that's a true wrap this time. I hope you like what you saw. Please make sure you are subscribed to my channel and definitely hit like if you like what you saw and leave a comment. I'm trying my best to answer these questions. I've got a lot more in store for you. 2021 is all about YouTube. Thank you for watching. Now, if this video intrigued you and you would like to train under my system using my principles, then I invite you to click on the link below and subscribe to Booty by Brett and join the thousands of other happy members who are seeing amazing results.